Police officer pulls over Keanu Reeves, then realizes who he's talking to. It was a regular quiet afternoon in a small Californian town. Officer Mark had just started his shift, cruising the streets in his patrol car. Mark loved his job. He believed every encounter was an opportunity to make a difference, even the mundane tasks like issuing speeding tickets. But today, fate had something extraordinary in store for him. The day had been uneventful so far. The radio chatter was minimal, and the roads were relatively empty. The occasional passerby would wave at Mark, and he'd wave back with a friendly smile. He was proud to serve this community. However, as he approached a stretch of highway that rarely saw much traffic, something caught his eye. A sleek black car zipped past him, well above the speed limit. Mark's trained instincts kicked in. The car wasn't just speeding, it was moving with a purpose, as if the driver was in a rush to get somewhere. He quickly flicked on his lights and sirens, pulling out to follow the vehicle. It was his duty to ensure everyone's safety, including the driver's. The car slowed down and pulled over onto the shoulder. Mark parked his patrol car behind it and took a moment to assess the situation. He approached cautiously, as every officer is trained to do, his hand resting lightly on his holster. The car's tinted windows added a layer of mystery, and Mark couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity about who might be behind the wheel. He knocked on the driver's side window, and it rolled down smoothly. What Mark saw next left him momentarily speechless. Sitting there, wearing a calm and composed expression, was none other than Keanu Reeves. Yes, the Keanu Reeves. The Hollywood superstar known for his roles in blockbuster films like The Matrix and John Wick. Mark blinked a couple of times, trying to process what he was seeing. Was it really him? Keanu, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. He looked up at Mark with a polite smile and said, "Good afternoon, officer. Was I going a little too fast?" His voice was just as Mark had imagined, gentle, humble, and undeniably kind. Mark quickly composed himself. "Good afternoon, sir. You were going a bit over the speed limit. May I see your driver's license and registration?" "Of course," Keanu replied, reaching into his glove compartment. He moved carefully, aware of the protocols. Mark appreciated the courtesy. As he handed over his documents, Mark couldn't help but notice how down-to-earth Keanu seemed, despite his fame. While verifying the information, Mark tried to act professionally, but his mind was racing. He'd been a fan of Keanu for years. Like many others, he admired not just the actor's talent but also the countless stories of his kindness and generosity. Stories about Keanu giving up his seat on the subway, donating millions to charity, and treating people with genuine respect had made him a legend both on and off the screen. As Mark returned to the car, he decided to address the elephant in the room. "Mr. Reeves, I have to admit, I'm a big fan of your work. It's not every day I pull over someone like you." Keanu chuckled softly. "Thank you, officer. That means a lot. But today, I'm just another guy who needs to slow down, right?" Mark smiled. "Fair enough. May I ask where you were headed in such a hurry?" Keanu hesitated for a moment, his expression turning slightly serious. "Actually, I'm on my way to visit a children's hospital. There's a young boy there named Liam. He's a big fan of mine, and his family reached out to let me know he's going through a tough time. I wanted to surprise him." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't some fabricated excuse to get out of a ticket. He could see the sincerity in Keanu's eyes. It was the kind of story that reminded Mark why he became a police officer in the first place. To serve and protect, yes, but also to connect with people and understand their humanity. "That's really admirable," Mark said, his voice softer now. "But you have to understand, speeding is dangerous. What if something happened to you on the way there?" Keanu nodded, acknowledging the point. "You're absolutely right, officer. I let my emotions get the better of me. I'll be more careful." Mark appreciated the humility. He decided not to issue a ticket, opting instead for a warning. But as he handed Keanu back his documents, he couldn't resist asking one more question. "Would it be all right if I joined you at the hospital?" "Off duty, of course. I think it'd mean a lot to Liam to have a police officer there too." Keanu's face lit up with genuine warmth. "I'd love that. Thank you, officer. I think Liam would be thrilled. And just like that, Mark's day took a turn he never could have predicted. He followed Keanu to the hospital, his patrol car trailing the actor's sleek vehicle. Along the way, Mark couldn't stop thinking about how surreal this all felt. Yet, at the same time, it reminded him of the simple truth that everyone, even a Hollywood star, has a story, a reason for their actions, and a heart capable of immense kindness. When they arrived at the hospital, the staff were understandably surprised to see Keanu Reeves walk through their doors, accompanied by a uniformed police officer. They quickly directed them to Liam's room. The boy, no older than 10, was lying in bed, his frail body a stark contrast to the bright, hopeful smile that spread across his face when he saw who had come to visit him. "No way!" Liam exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You're Keanu Reeves. And a police officer too." Keanu knelt by the boy's bedside, taking his hand gently. "That's right, Liam. And I heard you're one of the bravest kids out there. So I had to come meet you in person." Mark stood nearby, his heart swelling with emotion as he watched the interaction. Keanu spent the next hour talking to Liam, answering his questions about movies, and even reenacting a few lines from The Matrix. Liam's laughter filled the room, a sound that seemed to lighten the burden on everyone's shoulders. Before leaving, Keanu handed Liam a signed photo and a promise. "When you get better, Liam, you're coming to the set of my next movie. We'll make it a day you'll never forget." Tears welled up in the boy's eyes as he hugged Keanu tightly. Mark felt his own eyes sting, moved by the pure joy radiating from Liam. It was a moment that reaffirmed his faith in humanity and the power of compassion. As they walked back to their cars, Keanu turned to Mark. "Thank you for understanding back there on the road, officer. And thank you for coming here today. It's moments like these that make all the difference." Mark shook his head, humbled. "No, thank you, Mr. Reeves. You reminded me why I do what I do. And please, call me Mark." They parted ways, but the memory of that day stayed with Mark for a long time. It wasn't every day that a simple traffic stop turned into a life-changing encounter. And it wasn't every day that a Hollywood superstar showed the world what it truly meant to be a hero, not just on screen but in real life too. As Mark drove home that evening, the events of the day played over in his mind. He couldn't help but smile. Meeting Keanu Reeves and witnessing his kindness had been an unforgettable experience. But more than that, it had reminded him of the importance of small actions, the way they could ripple out and touch so many lives. What he didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a connection that would change his life in ways he never expected. A few weeks passed, and Mark returned to his usual routine. He continued his patrols, wrote reports, and responded to calls. But every now and then, he'd think back to that day at the hospital. He wondered how Liam was doing and if Keanu had kept in touch with the boy's family. The encounter had left a lasting impression, not just on Mark but also on the community. Word had spread about the kind-hearted actor and the police officer who had accompanied him, and it became the talk of the town for days. Then one afternoon, Mark received an unexpected call. He was sitting in the precinct, finishing up some paperwork, when his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered anyway. "Hello, Officer Mark speaking." "Hi, Mark. This is Keanu Reeves." For a moment, Mark thought it might be a prank. But then he recognized the voice, calm and unmistakable. He sat up straighter in his chair, surprised and a little nervous. "Mr. Reeves, it's good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I just wanted to thank you again for that day at the hospital," Keanu said. "Liam's family told me how much your presence meant to them. And, well, I was wondering if you might be interested in helping me with something." Mark's curiosity was piqued. "Of course. What do you have in mind?" Keanu explained that he was organizing a fundraiser for children's hospitals across the state. It would include a charity gala and several community events, and he wanted Mark to be a part of it. "You were such a positive influence on Liam," Keanu said. "I think having someone like you involved could inspire a lot of people." Mark was taken aback by the offer. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but the idea of contributing to such an important cause was too meaningful to pass up. "I'd be honored," he said. In the weeks that followed, Mark found himself stepping into a world he never thought he'd be a part of. He attended planning meetings, gave interviews about his experience with Keanu, and even helped coordinate events. The gala was the centerpiece of the fundraiser, and Keanu insisted that Mark be a guest of honor. "You're a hero in your own right," Keanu told him. "People need to hear your story." The night of the gala arrived, and Mark felt a mix of excitement and nerves. He wore his dress uniform, freshly pressed, and tried not to fidget as he entered the grand ballroom. The room was filled with people, celebrities, philanthropists, and community leaders, all gathered to support the cause. Mark felt out of place at first, but Keanu greeted him warmly and introduced him to everyone as if they were old friends. As the evening went on, Mark began to relax. He spoke on stage about his encounter with Keanu and Liam, sharing how it had reminded him of the power of kindness and connection. The audience listened intently, moved by his words. When he finished, the room erupted into applause, and Mark felt a swell of pride he hadn't experienced before. After the event, Keanu pulled him aside. "You did great up there," he said. "And more importantly, we raised over $2 million tonight. That's going to make a huge difference for so many kids." Mark couldn't believe it. He had played a small part in something so much bigger than himself, and it felt incredible. But the surprises didn't end there. Over the next few months, Mark and Keanu continued to work together on various initiatives. They visited more hospitals, met with children and their families, and spoke about the importance of community. Mark became a local hero in his own right, not because of his badge, but because of his compassion and willingness to help. One day, while visiting a hospital in Los Angeles, Mark and Keanu ran into Liam's family again. The boy had been responding well to treatment, and his health had improved significantly. When Liam saw them, he ran up and hugged them both tightly. "You kept your promise," Liam said, looking up at Keanu with a beaming smile. "And you brought Officer Mark again." Keanu laughed. "Of course, buddy. We're a team now." Mark felt his throat tighten as he looked at Liam. Seeing the boy so full of life was a reminder of why they were doing all of this. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about making a real difference, one life at a time. As they said their goodbyes, Liam handed Mark a drawing he had made. It was a picture of a police car and a movie star standing together, with the words, "Thank you," written in bright, colorful letters. Mark tucked it carefully into his jacket pocket, knowing it was something he'd treasure forever. That evening, as Mark drove home, he thought about how much his life had changed since that fateful day on the highway. What had started as a routine traffic stop had turned into a journey of compassion, connection, and hope. He had learned that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes they find each other in the most unexpected ways. Mark didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: he would carry the lessons of this experience with him for the rest of his life. And he would always be grateful for the day he pulled over Keanu Reeves and discovered not just a movie star, but a man with a heart as big as his reputation.